Hey there, and welcome back to the Disconnected. I'm here with my Scream Factory collection, and you may know what that means. It is time to round out our series on all of my Scream Factory releases. This is part number 4. Let's get through all of these slipcovers today, including the slate of alternative slipcovers for those of you that may not even know about those. Let's get into it. Alright, getting straight into the slipcover releases. This first is an IFC Midnight release. That is Don't Knock Twice with Katie Sackhoff. Next is Frank Langella in Dracula with Laurence Olivier. Next Dracula is Dracula Prince of Darkness, a classic one. Then we have one of my favorites in this group, that is Drag Me to Hell. It is important to note on this one that there was a replacement disc needed. There was an issue with the original disc, and they are still releasing those. This one is directed by Sam Raimi, and it stars Justin Long, and it's just a really, really fun story. If you've never seen it, I would certainly suggest Drag Me to Hell. Next one is Dreamscape. This one has been slept on for quite some time. A lot of people know this as Dennis Quaid's, one of his greats. It's a great release. Amazon is still selling this one with the slipcover in a lot of regions. Not everywhere, of course, but in many areas. Next is The Editor. I believe this is a Canadian release. This is one of the odd releases that is not an IFC Midnight release that did get a slipcover that is not a collector's edition. Next up is Elizabeth Harvest with that hype sticker on there. This is another IFC Midnight release. Next one is Barbara Hershey in the ghost story called The Entity. This is a great classic 80s movie. A lot of people have seen that one and love it. Next is one that I, of course, have about 5 releases of. This is Escape from LA. It's a John Carpenter movie, so I go crazy for it. Yeah, it's not one of his top 5, but it's still a great fun one. But the better movie, of course, Escape from New York. This is the original movie before Escape from LA. Snake Plissken, of course, going crazy. I'm thinking we're going to be getting a 4K of that one soon. One of my most anticipated for this year was Event Horizon. The artwork on this one certainly looks a lot better in person than it did in the mock-ups that they had released as promo images. And then, of course, as in with most of their releases, they have the original theatrical artwork underneath. I like that one quite a bit. Love that movie. I wish we had gotten some of that fabled lost footage, but it does not exist. Next up is The Evil of Frankenstein with Peter Cushing. This is a classic Hammer horror movie. Gotta love the classic artwork on that one. And then we have Exorcist 2, The Heretic. Of course, Linda Blair back in that one. Then we have The Exorcist 3. Many people love this one as much, if not more, than the original. Obviously, one of the most famous scenes in horror is in this movie. Great release. Then we have Extraterrestrial. Really good artwork on that one. Fender Bender. Still have not watched this one, but this one looks really good. Then we have Feral. This is another IFC Midnight release. And then the classic Firestarter from Stephen King, starring Drew Barrymore. Here is the back art on that one. And then another favorite from John Carpenter, The Fog. This is the other one that I anticipate that we're going to be getting a 4K release of soon because of their license from Studio Canal on their first 2 4K releases that we're going to go over. I would expect to see that in the next 6 or 8 months, I'm sure. Then we have Frankenstein Created Woman with Peter Cushing. Gotta love the classic Hammer art there. Every time I see this cover, am I the only one? I always look at that and think, you know, that kind of looks like Christopher Walken. Alright, in our next compartment, we start with one of my favorites from Scream Factory's catalog, and that is Stuart Gordon's From Beyond. This is starring Jeffrey Combs and Barbara Crampton. and this is adapted from an H.P. Lovecraft story. A lot of people hate that cover art and know it with the original art. Don't know why I had not flipped that one over. I will be replacing that now. Anyways, this is one of my favorite movies from the Scream Factory catalog. I love this movie. It is so much fun. The practical effects in this movie are great. It is one of those weird, goopy, just out-of-nowhere Lovecraft adaptations that takes you by surprise. Not to mention you get Barbara Crampton set up in a BDSM outfit, and you can't go wrong there. Next up is Tobe Hooper's The Funhouse. I gotta be honest, I really don't love this movie. It is a slow first half of this movie. The first act is rather boring, and then it takes off, sort of. It is obviously nothing compared to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but there is the original theatrical artwork. Next is the Garbage Pail Kids movie. I have not watched this one, well, this version yet, but anybody that's seen the movie can attest for why. It's really not that great. Gotta love on the back artwork there, the level of detail that they went into. Next is a fairly recent one, that is Ghost Ship. This movie has one of the best openings of all time in horror history, and then it completely shits the bed for the rest of the movie. It's too bad. It was a fun concept, and again, really great, strong opening, but then we just lose it all. One I watched recently, this is Ghost Stories. This is an anthology movie from across the pond, mostly starring Martin Freeman. He's the big name in this. This one is, it was decent. There are a couple sequences in this movie that are genuinely creepy. It's a good modern day anthology, which is semi-rare nowadays. Next is Ginger Snaps. I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for this, but I'm not a big fan of this movie. Some of the effects are good. The actual story itself has just never gripped me the way it's gripped a lot of others. Maybe it's because I didn't grow up with a close sisterly bond as another female, but yeah, this one just never captivated me. Next is Gravy, You Are What We Eat. And then Eli Roth's The Green Inferno, his love letter to Cannibal Holocaust. This is one that he got a lot of locals to participate in the movie, showed them Cannibal Holocaust so they knew how to act, and a lot of people took that as exploitative, and I'm not going to make a judgment either way. Next is The Hallow. And then we got one of their first releases ever, Halloween 2 Special Collector's Edition, with that hype sticker on there. This one originally came with a nurse's hat with it, to commemorate one of the characters that you see there on the right. Donald Pleasant's in there, Jamie Lee Curtis still. Great movie. And an even better movie, in my opinion, is Halloween 3 with Tom Atkins. This one has obviously gotten a lot of overhyped love over the last couple of years, but this movie is genuinely great, in my opinion. It is a well-written story, lots of fun effects. The story itself is good and has a nice ending to it that leaves you wanting more rather than thinking it was too long. Next is Harvest with Michael Shannon. He is an incredible actor. Speaking of incredible actors, next is Hellions with Robert Patrick. And just a minute ago we had Linda Blair in The Exorcist 2. Here she is in Hell Night. This is getting to be one of the more rare Scream Factory titles. There she is there. And then one of my favorite remakes, this is House on Haunted Hill. This is an odd movie. It is set in Southern California, near where I grew up, and you can tell it is a very good story, and there's the original artwork. Obviously nobody can replace Vincent Price, but he certainly tries. Next is House on Willow Street, followed by another recent watch. This is The House That Jack Built, the director's cut with Matt Dillon. This is a movie that is known for being incredibly brutal, and rightly so. It is incredibly realistic when it's violent, and it goes into this character study of this main character, Matt Dillon, and it just goes deep into his psyche. Like that one quite a bit. Next is the classic The Howling. I imagine we'll have a 4K of this very soon, I'm sure, especially because it has been somehow gaining popularity over the last couple of years. Seems like a generation is discovering it finally. Next is I Am Fear. And the last on this row is a recent release that I don't think really needed this collector's edition, but that is Idle Hands with Devon Sawa. I had the old Blu-ray release, and that's why this one has not been opened yet. It is the exact same scan as the old release, so kind of a missed opportunity there in my opinion. Next up is another odd one that is not an IFC Midnight release or a collector's edition that got a slipcover. This is I'll Take Your Dead. And then one of the most underrated movies in the Scream catalog, in my opinion, In the Mouth of Madness by John Carpenter. This movie stars Sam Neill, and it is incredible. This is a one of those classic losing your mind movies, and there's a lot of just random things that happen in this movie that make you question what you just saw. It is inspired by an H.P. Lovecraft story, and it is great. Next up is one of the best classic movies in the Scream Factory catalog. That is Invasion of the Body Snatchers with Jeff Goldblum and Donald Sutherland. If you've never seen this movie, I don't understand how. This is literally one of the 10 best movies of the 1970s. It has some incredible practical effects. It is a very breezy movie. It goes by so quick. The story is very tight. Here is the original theatrical artwork that a lot of people remember. And yeah, if you've never seen this, good gosh, go get this and watch this immediately. It is a wonderful story. Next one, another non-IFC Midnight, non-collector's edition with the slip. That's ITSY BITSY. And then we have Jackals. The controversial release, Jeepers Creepers with Justin Long. This one is controversial because Victor Salva, the director, is a kid diddler. And of course, he also directed the sequel, Jeepers Creepers 2. This one is a rather fun franchise. I hate that there is this controversy surrounding it, but it's good movies. Next is Kaleidoscope with Toby Jones, IFC Midnight release. Then we have the just came out this week, Kindred. Have not watched that yet, of course. And the other recently released title, King Kong. This one has been anticipated for quite some time. So glad that this came out here in May of 2021. Next is Kiss of the Vampire. Get some of that glare off of there. Sorry for the glare in here. Next is Bill Pullman and Bridget Fonda in Lake Placid. Absolutely amazing movie from 1999. Here's the back art. And of course, the theatrical on the inside. All right, George A. Romero's follow-up today is Land of the Dead. I gotta be honest, I love George A. Romero. Did not love this movie. It is a great release. Lots of, as you can see there, lots of special features. In my opinion, it just falls flat from what it could have been. This to me seems like what The Walking Dead should have been, which I would have been happy with that. So, I mean, that says a lot. Land of the Dead isn't terrible. It's just not up to George A. Romero's standards. Next is The Lawnmower Man. I absolutely love the Scream Factory art for this one. There is the back. Good 2-disc release for this one. And there is the original theatrical art. Next is The Lesson. Another one of those weird non-IFC Midnight, non-collector's edition releases. And we're going to get 2 of those in a row. This is Let's Scare Julie. This one just came out recently, late last year, I believe. Have not gotten a chance to watch that one. All right, another Tobe Hooper film. This is the collector's edition of Life Force. This is an insane movie. If you've never seen it, I would suggest getting the Steelbook, of course. But yeah, this is a great movie. Much better than the Funhouse, in my opinion. Then we have Clive Barker's Lord of Illusions. I still got the plastic on the edges of that one, and it's warping a little. That's why it looks a little off. But this is a great one. Then we have Low Life. That was an IFC Midnight release. And then, of course, Mad Max. This is one that seems odd in the Scream Factory line, but I'm glad we have it. This is, of course, now available from Kino Lorber in 4K, and this version is out of print. Next compartment, this is another one of my favorite Scream Factory releases. This is Manhunter. This is a Michael Mann movie. This is basically the Silence of the Lambs story before Silence of the Lambs came out, and in my opinion, there are some things about this movie that are much better. This movie is rumored to be getting a 4K UHD release soon, and I am here for that. I cannot wait to see that. The colors in this movie are great. Here is the original theatrical art on that one. Brian Cox plays Lecter in this movie. You can see him right there. And yeah, this is just a great movie. Next up, Mermaid, Lake of the Dead, and The Midnight Man. That one has Robert Englund in it. The classic Misery with Kathy Bates and James Caan. This is a Stephen King adapted story that is horrifying in parts, about a fanatic that goes crazy and kidnaps an author. Hopefully everybody's seen that one. Next is Monkey's Paw. Then we have Motel Hell. This is one that has been very associated with the Scream Factory brand. Very famous movie. Here is the back. Then one of the best releases to come out of Scream Factory, that is My Bloody Valentine. They did some amazing things with this. Found some footage that we've never seen before. Got a new 4K scan of the original camera negative. And I mean, that's just astonishing. Just about a year before this came out, the director was on a podcast stating that it would likely never see the light of day with the uncut footage. And then a year later, we got it. With a NECA figure to go with it. Doesn't get much better than that. Next is Narcopolis. It's 2024. All drugs are legal. Does not sound super scary to me. Anyways. Next up is the classic Nightbreed. Most people have seen this one, and it's got the limited edition with Scream Factory as well. But this is the collector's edition. Next up, one of the last slipcovers I found. This is Night of the Comet. This is a rather silly movie, but lots of merits to it still. Then we have Night of the Creeps. The good news is your date is here. The bad news is he's dead. This has Tom Atkins in it, playing one of his badass roles that he always played in the 80s. Next is Night of the Demons. Very, very big name movie for Scream Factory. This has Linnea Quigley in it, amongst others. Very famous imagery from that movie. Then we have Collector's Edition for Ninja 3, The Domination. This is one of those odd titles where they did a standard release and the Collector's Edition. Then we have Brian De Palma's Obsession. I love the artwork on this. It just looks fantastic. Here is the back. Then the theatrical art that a lot of people remember is this one. Gotta love how prominent the color yellow is there. Then we have the only Scream Factory catalog title from Takashi Miike, that is Over Your Dead Body. And from Wes Craven, The People Under the Stairs. This is an absolute classic if you've never seen it. There are so many satisfying scenes in this movie. Really well directed. Then we have Pet Sematary 2. This artwork pissed so many people off. I don't hate it, but granted, it's not great. I still need to pop this one in. Have not found the time for that. Then we have Phantasm 2 Collector's Edition with Angus Scrimm, of course. And that damn sphere. Then we have Phantom of the Opera, classic horror movie. And then from Paul Williams, this is Phantom of the Paradise. This is a classic musical horror movie. If you've never seen it, this one is just incredible. Very famous picture there. And the original theatrical artwork that I would love to have the one sheet of. There it is. Okay, next section, we've got Poltergeist 2 with the brand new Scream Factory artwork on top. There is my back of Poltergeist 2. And Poltergeist 3, of course. Very similar artwork to Part 2. I think Part 3 is a lot better than people give it credit for. It's a little one of, it's one of the more batshit titles. Alright, one of John Carpenter's most slept-on movies. This is Prince of Darkness. There is the back with Donald Pleasance with an axe. And I'm going to jump to the next one before I speak on it, because this is Prince of Darkness in 4K. I had the original Studio Canal 4K, that's why I've not opened this one yet. But this is one, if you have not got, the HDR on this title is incredible. The colors are amazing in this film with that HDR, especially the green from the canister that glows in the middle of the church. If you've never seen Prince of Darkness, this is one of John Carpenter's better films, in my opinion. Really good, creepy story. Happens in an old abandoned church. Great stuff. Give it a watch. Next is Prison. Here is the back art. And the original theatrical on that. I love. One of the better posters for its age. Then, of course, Psycho 2 with Anthony Perkins. Some surprisingly good sequels to Psycho. A lot of people just overlook them because of how big the first one was, but they're not bad at all. And speaking of Psycho, here's Psycho 3, still with Anthony Perkins. And if you didn't know, this one is actually directed by Anthony Perkins. He just took everything he loved about the character and gave it his all. Then we have Pumpkinhead with Lance Henriksen. This is an incredible masterpiece for practical effects. If you've never seen it, I don't understand how. You can see some of them right there. This is just a great movie, really good release, but of course, the Steelbook has a better transfer on it now. Then we have Pyewacket, followed by Cronenberg's Rabid. This is a fun and very weird intro to Cronenberg. If you've never seen it, it's one of his first movies. There is a lot that happens in this movie that will make you question why you're really watching it. This is the most famous artwork from it. Good movie, though. Then we have the adaptation of that David Cronenberg Rabid movie. Rabid by the Soska sisters. This is inferior, to say the least, compared to the other Rabid movie. But I don't think it's as bad as it gets shamed to be. Then we have John Lithgow in Raising Cain. Great movie. He is, in my opinion, one of the better actors of his generation. He's always good. Next, we have another one I just watched recently, that is Relic. This is a movie that deals with Alzheimer's or dementia with Emily Mortimer. And it's really good. A lot of fucked up twists and turns near the end of it. Then we have another recent release, The Rental. This is with Alison Brie and directed by her husband, Dave Franco. And yet another recent release, Rent-A-Pal with Will Wheaton. And then one of the more famous releases from Scream Factory, this is The Return of the Living Dead. This is almost the complete cut with all of the original music. It is missing one musical track they couldn't get the rights to. That one is only available on the second sight release from the UK. But if you've never seen it, this is literally one of the best horror movies of all time. It's hilarious and genuinely creepy. It introduces the character of Tarman. It is fantastic. And the rest of the series is not great, but speaking of, here is The Return of the Living Dead Part 2. The Return of the Living Dead, I believe, has 5 movies in it. I could be wrong there, but there's probably 2.5 that are good in the series. Next is Road Games. This movie has a vastly superior release from Indicator, but being a Scream Factory completist, there it is. Another Jamie Lee Curtis movie. Then the absolute classic series RoboCop. Here's Part 2. I wish they could have been able to do RoboCop and 2 and 3 all together. Arrow has put out RoboCop, the first one. Here is RoboCop 3 from Scream Factory. Alright, we are nearing the end here. Next up is an IFC Midnight release. This is Rust Creek. Then we have Serial Mom. This is with Sam Waterston and Ricky Lake. And a lot of people don't realize this. This movie was directed by John Waters. Next up, Wes Craven's The Serpent and the Rainbow. I love the new artwork for this. Scream Factory is not always great with their art, but man, did they kill it on this one. Here's the original theatrical art. Speaking of Wes Craven, here is Shocker, that he directed. Classic movie. Then we have a video game adaptation. This is Silent Hill. Another one where they absolutely killed it with the artwork, in my opinion. Then the first of their 2 back-to-back Christmas releases. This is Silent Night, Deadly Night. Followed by Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2. Stephen King's adaptation, Silver Bullet. There is the back on that one. Then we have Slasher Season 1. They put out this entire first season on Blu-ray, and then I think there's 2 or 3 other seasons of this that they could have released that they just haven't, and they don't have Blu-ray releases in the US. Alright, now the big trilogy. Here is Sleepaway Camp with Felissa Rose. The role that she has taken and made a career out of on that one scene at the end of this movie. Here is Sleepaway Camp Part 2. The back of that with the Friday the 13th wannabe ripoff mask. And then, of course, Sleepaway Camp 3. This is another one I wish they would have done an actual box set of back then. But alas, here we are. Alright, here's one that I'd seen multiple times, so I haven't opened it yet. This is Sleepwalkers, another Stephen King adaptation. This is one that was directed by Mick Garris, who is very much associated with the genre for many movies. Then we have one of my favorites that I've watched so many times. This is Slither. This is from James Gunn. I believe this is his first movie that he directed. He did great with this movie. I think he had some work that he did on a Troma release first that he co-directed, but this is his first one that he did by himself. Hilarious movie, super practical effect heavy movie. Then we have Species. This is one of the ones I think they could have done a lot better with that art, but there it is. At least it's a good release. Next up, we have Sputnik, IFC Midnight release. Then Squirm. This is an older release from Scream Factory. A little light on features, but that's alright. Then we have John Carpenter's Starman with Jeff Bridges. You can see how young Jeff Bridges is there. He would, of course, grow up to be the dude. There he is on the original theatrical artwork. Then we have Eli Roth's The Stranger. All he did was produce this one. And of course, because of the fuzzy picture, it does not want to focus. There is the back. Not a ton of special features on there. It's an IFC Midnight release. Alright, then one of my favorite Scream Factory movies. That is The Strangers. I've bought this a few times, actually. I adore this movie. This is a movie I will never forget. My experience in the theater scared the crap out of me. Came out perfect time when I was starting to live on my own, and I think that's one of the reasons it really got to me. I also lived out in the middle of nowhere when it came out. Great, great movie with Liv Tyler. Okay, next we have an IFC Midnight release called Stung. Looks very cheesy and over the top. Another IFC, this is Submerged. Then a classic, Tales from the Crypt presents Bordello of Blood. Love this one. This is a spin-off movie from the TV series. I'm sure you can guess what the next one is. Tales from the Crypt presents Demon Knight with Billy Zane and William Sadler. They are both actually going to be at a convention I'm going to this month at a Kansas City Crypticon. Here's the back of that one. And I love the original art for this, how much they showed off the Crypt Keeper. Then we have Tales from the Dark Side. This is a classic. Pretty much everybody knows about this one. Not going to spend a lot of time going over that. And then a big one that not enough people give attention to, that is Tales from the Hood. This movie is incredible. It came out at a really, really great time to highlight some of these black actors and give some genuine horror with some protagonists and antagonists that are black. give some good representation there, and talk about things that aren't always talked about. This is featured very highly in the horror noir documentary that's on Shudder, and got a physical release from RLJE. This is the very famous poster art from Tales from the Hood. Great movie. If you've never seen it, you absolutely need to. Then another classic pair of movies. This is Teen Wolf with Michael J. Fox. There he is, looking young and Back to the Future-ish. And then, of course, the sequel, Teen Wolf 2 with Jason Bateman. And there he is. Next up, Jamie Lee Curtis in Terror Train. This is an interesting movie. This is a New Year's movie. If you've never seen it, obviously you should give that one a watch. It is very much a classic. Speaking of that, Tobe Hooper's follow-up to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. This is an insane movie that in a lot of ways live up to and possibly even surpass the original. Obviously it's not quite as scary as the original, it's not as groundbreaking as the original, but oh man, this movie is insanity. Really great release from Scream Factory. And then of course the iconic Breakfast Club mocking original theatrical artwork. And speaking of Texas Chainsaw, this is the next generation. I really wish we would have got the original art that was supposed to feature McConaughey and his co-star Renee Zellweger. Here is the back. Here is the original theatrical art. And then, another one of my favorite Carpenters. This is They Live, still has the hype sticker on it, on the front there. This is one of his best movies, and the best way to see it is this new 4K release. This movie looks great in 4K. I'd say probably not quite as good as Prince of Darkness, but it is still a really good one to throw on and just see all of the contrast that you can pull. Quite a lot of blacks in that movie, so it shines. Speaking of Carpenter, one that we are getting from Universal in 4K this year, here is The Thing with Kurt Russell. The Steelbook has the better scan of this from Scream Factory, but again, we're getting a better release this fall. Here is the back. This is literally one of the best movies of all time. There's not a whole lot I can say about this that hasn't been said before. Great movie, Kurt Russell's incredible in it, and the effects are something that literally set the bar for the industry. Next is 13 Ghosts. My disc is loose. You can hear it rattling around in there. A lot of people hate this movie. I genuinely love this movie. I love the style of it. I love the lore that they set in it. Matthew Lillard is hilarious in this movie. There he is. And I'm glad they finally released it on Scream Factory Blu-ray. It is great. Here is Toolbox Murders 2. And speaking of 4K, we are getting the first Toolbox Murders in 4K from Blue Underground early in 2022. Here is Trespassers, an IFC Midnight release. Then another of my favorites from Scream Factory. This is Trick or Treat from Michael Dougherty. This movie is what all anthology movies should strive to be. This movie is incredible. Absolutely incredible acting. Great wraparound story. Really good effects in it. And genuinely creepy for most of the movie. It is such a great film. If you've never seen this, man, I don't even know how else to sell it to you. This movie is amazing. And now that we're seeing Sam everywhere, I really hope that someday we get that Michael Dougherty directed sequel to Trick or Treat that he's talked about. But now he's out making big Godzilla movies, so who knows. Another one from my childhood is Urban Legend. Love this movie. Don't know why. It's really not that great. This one is directed by Jamie Blanks. It is made well, but I think the story could have been a hell of a lot better. Yeah, good movie. Speaking of Jamie Blanks, he also directed Valentine. This one is a lot better in my opinion. I love slashers, and this one delivers. This one is with David Boreanaz from Buffy there, and there's all kinds of famous names in this one. I mean, you've got Denise Richards and Katherine Heigl when she's very young, and a very iconic mask, and the original theatrical artwork is right there. Praise be, we are at our final section of this Scream Factory collection. We have John Carpenter's Vampires. This is essentially a Western. It is built like a Western and filmed like a Western. And John Carpenter is a big fan of Westerns, so that should not be a surprise to anybody. Next we have Wings Hauser in Vice Squad. This is a really fun movie. It's not a great movie, but man, is it fun as hell to watch. If you've never seen it, I certainly recommend it. This one is great and a pretty good release. Lots of good stuff on there. Another John Carpenter movie, we have Village of the Damned. This is, of course, a remake, and it has some very iconic imagery at the top there. Looks just like the original. Then we have The Widow and The Wildling. That one also stars Liv Tyler. Then the next one we have is The Wind, Demons of the Prairie from IFC Midnight. Then we have Witches in the Woods. Really good artwork on this one. Wormwood, Road of the Dead. Just highlight the back on this one. Genuinely creepy looking on a couple images. And then the final Scream Factory slip release is Zombie Fight Club. But we're still not done with the slipcovers. Let's go through the alternative slipcovers. Scream Factory has released quite a few titles like Candyman with an alternative slipcover that came with 2 posters and 2 slipcovers, so you could choose which art to use. And let's go through that list now. Speaking of Candyman, here is the alternative. And on these, they have full art on the back as well. Classic from the movie still. And then for Carrie, this is the alternative art. There is the back. And then my favorite alternative slipcover, this is Child's Play, made to look like the box from the movie. And then we have My Bloody Valentine. This one is great as well. Tom Atkins in Night of the Creeps. And then the hardest one to find right now, The Return of the Living Dead. I've got that one on a little plastic protector. I just noticed that Return of the Living Dead is the only one to not have a full art back. And then the last alternative slipcover is John Carpenter's The Thing. This is one of the art pieces I genuinely loved that they put out like this. And that is it. That is the entirety of my Scream Factory collection. Thanks for hanging out for these 4 videos. So I'm cutting in here. I just got another package in that is not movies from Scream Factory, but it had this picture on the front. As you can see, that means that there must be something fantastic inside. And if you watched part 2 of my videos on Scream Factory, you'll see that I had one grail that I had been missing, and that is this. This is the Angela NECA figure from Night of the Demons from Scream Factory. There's the logo there. And I finally have it. So as of this morning, thanks to another collector online, I am complete from Scream Factory. I've got all of the figures, all of the movie releases, many of the promo materials, and really, if I had it my way, I'd have all the posters, but that's probably never going to happen at this point. Hope you enjoy it. Anybody that's getting into Scream Factory, please share the channel with them or these specific videos, as I literally go over everything. If there's anything else about Scream Factory you'd like to know, and you're curious about, let me know in the comments below or give me a message. Of course, I'll be covering everything that comes out from Scream Factory in the future. From one collector to all of you, have a good night.